Hello class, today we are going to go over chapter 10. My name is Ahmad.
I'm Brian.
I'm Kiana.
I'm Tanupriya.
And now we're going to go over the great on the job strategy. So we're going to go over different parts of the chapter that we read with different person, different pitch, the punchline, the backstory, and connect the dots. So for different person, different pitch, for each audience, your pitch or story needs to resonate with them the most. You need to read your audience, see what part of your pitch will resonate with them the most, see what type of people they are. You have to match your pitch with the person or audience. Just like you have multiple social media profiles, you need to understand that each situation warrants a different approach. It depends on what the occasion is, what you're selling, what you're presenting. It all depends. You have to read that to be an effective pitcher. You need to understand and use the elements in your pitch in the most effective manner. So this needs to be a thoroughly planned pitch or a story. You can't just say whatever. And a good pitch has two goals, either to make a good impression or to grow your professional network. You need to present yourself in a professional manner no matter what, and always attempt to grow and grow your network, and always strive to present in the best way. And next, we have the punchline.
Okay, so what do you guys think when you say punchline? Okay, yeah, like a joke, probably something like a joke. A joke has a punchline, right? So the punchline is basically the main sentence of your joke that kind of brings the whole thing together. So that's kind of the same thing with your agenda. You want to have a punchline that brings the whole thing together because you have a main point that you want to get across, and that should be the front and center of your whole elevator pitch. So there are several components to your punchline. The first is you have to have an agenda for yourself, which is basically you're setting a goal. So it's kind of like our first presentation. We talked about setting an objective for yourselves. So your agenda differs based on who you're talking to or the situation you're in. So a couple examples would be maybe you want to impress your boss, or you want to talk to and make new friends at some sort of conference. So your agenda in each of these cases would be different, and you have to adjust your punchline and your elevator pitch based on that. The next thing you have to keep in mind is your pitch should be relevant and not recent. That means that when you're presenting to someone, when you're presenting your elevator pitch, the kind of stories and things you include in it have to be relevant to the audience, because that is what creates the most impact on them. And so obviously keep in mind that relevant always trumps recent. And the last thing is, what is your bait? Which is basically how do you reel in the people you're talking to. So to do that, you have to ask a couple of questions to yourself, which are like, why do you think you're great and what do you do, or how do you differentiate yourself? And once you answer these questions, you can basically help form a punchline for yourself. Now I have a short video to show you, which is like a good example and a bad example of the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch is your first step towards becoming a networking god. Hey, Mr. CEO. Good to see you, buddy. Good to see you.
Ruben, right?
Yes.
Oh, I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Nice.
So,
nice.
What is it that you do then exactly?
Well, you know, I like merge all my talents together and just give it out to the world, like all my stuff inside me. It's like a mixture of stuff. Like, I'm a creative guy, people's person, obviously. I write a bit of comedy and present. I get up stage, talk to people, and I just know together like, all my creative ideas and my whole team. That's not an elevator pitch. That's the ramblings of an unprepared big. An elevator pitch is a sentence that sums up what you do so concisely that you can tell it in the space of your average elevator ride. If you were to write it down, it'd be about 140 characters, which is about a tweet. So, let's try that again, shall we? Hey, Mr. CEO, good to see you, sir. Good to see you.
Hi, Ruben, right?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, I've heard a lot of good things about you.
Okay, nice.
So, what is it you do then?
I'm a presenter and a comic. I host live events and I make online comedy videos. And I'm also co-founder of individualism.co.uk, which is the UK's leading men's style blog.
Oh, excellent. We've got a few events coming up and we could
Okay.
do with your services. Have you got a card?
I do. Yes, I do. There you go.
I'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day, mate. See? Preparation. It got me some potential work with the CEO of this whole company.
Did you say a men's style blog?
Okay, so well, you saw he kind of talked about the same things in both examples. But in the first one, he started off and he was rambling, and when he started getting to the point, the CEO left the elevator. In the second example, he went to the point from in the beginning, and that ended up getting him a great opportunity with the CEO of the company. So this kind of shows you how a punchline is actually really useful. Now I'll pass it off to Kiana.
Alright, so I'm going to be talking about the backstory, and this is a really important part of your elevator pitch because it's what gives your pitch meaning. So what I like to think of when I think about your backstory is reflecting on your experiences in your past that lead to making your past relevant to your current position, and that's what's going to give it meaning. So always reflect on your why. How did you end up in the career that you're in or in the field that you're in, and that will help you elevate your backstory. And then you also want to discover your purpose, and you want it to be intentional. You don't want to just make up some random experiences that you didn't actually have, because it's not going to be genuine, and people are going to recognize that when you're giving your elevator pitch. And then you also want to use your backstory to make sense of your story, how you got to where you are. So, for example, I was a pre-med student before coming to UT Dallas. I went to Baylor my freshman year, and none of that is relevant to why I'm a marketing major right now. So what I would use for my backstory is how I worked on campus in a position where I got to make marketing materials for my job to encourage people to apply for the program, and then I would use that to talk about why I'm marketing now, why I like to create graphics and help other people market their organizations as well. And now I'll pass it off to Brian.
So when you're planning and once you have your punchline and your backstory, you have to make sure that you're able to connect the two and make them make sense. If you have a punchline or a backstory, an agenda, and you're just rambling and the two don't really connect to each other, you lose a lot of synergy and you're going to lose the attention of the audience very quickly. You need to make sure and ask, how does this relate to interview or audio, whatever different position you're in for giving the speech? So if you're giving a story, it has to relate to what you're trying to achieve, what your agenda is and what you want. If it doesn't, you lose cohesion. If it does, you gain a really powerful story, and as plenty of other groups have said, storytelling is very, very powerful. So remember, you need to make sure when you're telling your backstory, what question does this answer? There's a reason they're talking to you. If they're interviewing, they want to see if you're hardworking or something like that. They're never just going to ask you a question for no reason. So always make sure that you're anticipating and knowing the questions, so when you connect it back, your backstory back to your punchline, it answers that question. Because ultimately the story is going to impress your audience much more than just rambling on with your resume. If they wanted to simply see the stat-wise or Excel sheet of what you did, you could just not show up to the interview and they just look over your resume. They want to know who you are and what they're doing. So you follow their line of thought in order, like I said, to anticipate what they're trying to ask and what they're trying to get out of you. If you're in a marketing internship and they want somebody who's creative and knows newer trends and does this kind of thing, if you give a rambling story about how you worked on some farm and you did a project for a local farmer that was no way related to marketing or anything new, then they're not going to like it at all. It's not going to be good. So you have to make sure that you are answering the question of work ethic, new, whatever, anticipating you're trying to achieve. So in conclusion, Rick in Chapter 10 went over good method for elevator pitch, which covers that you need to make sure you have a different pitch for a different person. Every audience is different. Always be dynamic and versatile. And you want a punchline. If you go into something and you don't have a specific agenda or goal, then you're just going to ramble, you're not going to know what you're saying, and they're not going to know either. And your backstory is really important. Storytelling is extremely powerful, and understanding where you came from and who you are is going to result in a much better success in any situation. And finally, connect the dots. A good punchline and a good story that aren't related in any formal way will just leave a confused and bewildered audience. You need to make sure you connect them so the audience can make sure, and it drives the point home. Is there a quiz? Is there any questions?